Welcome to the show in a brand new week. Glad to have you with us. Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat with IrishBreakdown.com. I'm Sean Stiers, joined by Jesse Stiers. Good weekend, bad weekend, thumb up or thumb down?
Big thumbs up this weekend for me.
That was a video-only move there for a second as we come to you live on our YouTube channel, Sports Radio WSBT, as well as Irish Breakdowns YouTube channel. That was a delayed response. The season opener is just 27 days away. Yours truly will be live and in person in Miami for that game. Just got my flight booked this weekend. So I will be there. Whether or not you will be there, I guess we shall see. Maybe we'll, if you're going to be there, let me know where you're going to be. Maybe we'll meet up and you can buy me a beer before the game or something. An ice cold Budweiser, of course. Jesse, we've got a lot of defensive stuff. Notre Dame defense we're going to talk about today as Notre Dame football training camp continues as we count down to the season opener. We got to talk to defensive coordinator Chris Ash. Just, I believe it was over the weekend. The days all blurred together. Yeah, I believe it was Saturday that we got to talk to him, so we'll hear from him today. I wanted to ask you this first, though, before we start. Joe Alt. Can we call Joe Alt the Notre Dame great?
Have to. Yes, of course.
Another delayed response. Okay. Good. I think I'm in the same boat. He was in a mic'd up segment that I saw today on NFL Network. He was talking to a teammate. They're like standing over, during practice, talking to a teammate about eating grilled cheese sandwiches with tomato soup. And in Joe Alt's mind, that is the only way you're allowed to eat a grilled cheese sandwich, apparently, dipping it in tomato soup. Do you eat it that way? When you were growing up, did they serve school lunch, grilled cheese, tomato soup? Like, was that a lunch option that you remember?
That was a lunch option. I do remember that. I am not a fan of the tomato soup, though. I only eat grilled cheese, no tomato soup.
I'm not a big tomato soup person either. Your sister loves the grilled cheese, tomato soup. Your mom, I think maybe that's where she got it from. I'm just not a big tomato soup person. Honestly, if I'm going to have tomato soup, I've got to probably have some grilled cheese plus the crackers, but mostly the grilled cheese, with some nice, cheese dripping out of the side and dunk it in there a little bit. But I don't need the soup to have the grilled cheese. I would much rather just enjoy the grilled cheese sandwich myself.
Correct. A solo grilled cheese sandwich, there's nothing wrong with that.
I agree. But that's Joe Alt's take, and he was very dismayed that in many parts of the country, like, it's not just commonplace that you eat, like, that's the only way to eat your grilled cheese, apparently, is with the tomato soup. And he's from Minnesota originally. His dad, NFL player, although I believe he grew up in Minnesota. So that's the Joe Alt take, Midwestern, upper Midwestern, but thought it was interesting. Again, I'm not a tomato soup guy. All right, so we got to talk to Chris Ash, new Notre Dame defensive coordinator, over the weekend. We're going to hear some of his comments, and we shall discuss them as we go, with or without grilled cheese. Oh, I like the brick wall that you just put up behind you.
Trying to figure something out.
It's a good way to go. Is that maybe you should put that up whenever we talk Notre Dame defensive line, like you put the brick wall up behind you. What do you think?
These are good options. I know Notre Dame, you can also find some kind of Notre Dame backgrounds too.
So Chris Ash in his first fall camp with the Fighting Irish after taking over for Al Golden. And I just realized that, I'm just making all kinds of crazy mishaps here on the back end as I try to I'm stalling to get the right cut up right now is what I'm trying to do. There we go. Here it is. I've got the right one ready now. I had cut number 2 ready to go. I didn't have cut number 1 ready to go, which, makes it kind of hard. Fall camp number 1 for Chris Ash after taking over for Al Golden. We got to talk to him over the weekend. Here's what he likes about the defense so far?
Just the attitude and the spirit of the guys. They come to work every day. They seem to be having a lot of fun doing what they're doing. There's just tremendous chemistry on the group, in the whole group, in the small units with the D-line, linebackers, and DBs. But as a unit overall, there's great chemistry, great relationships, and these guys have a lot of fun together.
Great chemistry. They have a lot of fun together. What do you think is the importance of that chemistry he's talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think chemistry is important, but I would have liked a more deeper answer from Chris Ash talking about the defense than rather just talking about chemistry and the spirit of the guys. Like, of course, there's going to be good spirit. You just came off a national championship. These guys love to play football. And that's something that Golden talked about in the past and why he liked coaching at Notre Dame is guys wanted to be, wanted to learn. They wanted to be sponges. They took pride in their work. Like, that's nothing new in my opinion. I would have liked to him to dive a little bit deeper into maybe more schematics than just saying, spirit and chemistry are high. Because I feel like those things are going to be always going to be the case at Notre Dame.
Funny you say that because I've been thinking about this and putting these cuts together and listening to some of his answers. Now, he is going to get into some specifics about some different players like Jordan Botelho, Tae Johnson, and some other things. I think when you listen to some of Chris Ash's answers, it's obvious that he is a former head coach. That's kind of the way I look at it, because he has kind of perfected the art, not necessarily of the word salad, but saying things without actually saying anything. Like there's some of that. You don't look very happy with that.
No, it's just like, of course, coming from the NFL, guys are going to be more, worried about themselves and maybe, aren't the most excited to show up to practice every day. And there's more drama here and there. But again, at the college level, and when you're talking about Notre Dame, I just feel like those things are given, especially, it's not like there's been a rotation at position coach either, at these position coaches. So Chris Ash is the only new thing on the defensive side of the ball this season. So of course those things are going to remain constant. I want to know the things that you've seen that maybe you weren't ready for, or maybe things that caught you off guard, or schematically how guys are looking in certain situations. Like I just, to be honest with you, I could care less about the chemistry.
I agree. Like Don is saying that you're not going to get a lot of schematics at this point. I agree.
But you still could have answered in a way that gave a little bit more information.
Right. I like the way they get after the ball. I like how physical we are. Any of those kind of things, I think would have sufficed. But, again, it was a very coach speakish type answer. That's the kind of stuff that we got in the spring from him. And we got, kind of some more of that stuff. And again, I think what I'm inferring when I listen to some of it is this is a guy who's been a head coach. What do a head coach, because like the assistants typically will, they know where their boundaries are, but at the same time, the assistants, a lot of them are like Mike Denbrock, a lot different tact when he's talking with the media compared to Chris Ash. Mike Denbrock's not been a head coach though. And I think that once you become a head coach, you like Marcus Freeman has become more that way, even, compared to when he was a coordinator and he was talking. Like, as Marcus Freeman has gone on this path, and he's obviously going into season 4 now, it's like the word choice is narrow, and now we're going to, just sort of mash that down, and we're not going to, give anything more than that. So is what it is. I asked about Jordan Botelho, who, of course, missed most of last season after tearing the patellar tendon of his right knee. And then this offseason in June, he had surgery on a torn pectoral muscle. And the initial prognosis was that Jordan Botelho was going to be out for 4 months. He's been practicing. So I asked Chris Ash if Jordan Botelho is ahead of schedule with recovery right now.
I have no idea, honestly, I would tell you if I knew, but okay. But I really don't know. That's where he's at and where he's going, and the plan to get him back to 100%. That's between him and the sports performance team and the doctors, and we just do what they tell us to do. And as he progresses, they'll say, "Hey, he can do more," and that's really what it is.
So there you go. What do you think of that response?
I mean, pretty similar to the last response, but it makes more sense. He's only doing what the sports training staff tells him that they can do. But I'm just really surprised that Botelho's out there at all right now, and he's even allowed to be in helmets or, shoulder pads, shorts. Like, the fact that he's even on the field right now is crazy in my opinion. So he must be recovering ahead of schedule. And if you're Chris Ash and the defensive line, that's a hot commodity to have back, because he's a huge starter, if not depth piece, right? And we know that the defensive line is kind of like hockey. You're rotating between 2 or 3 kind of different line shifts, and having Jordan Botelho back would be definitely beneficial.
And I'm going to be honest with you. I asked the question not expecting to get much in the way of details in terms of what the timeline, could be, because typically Marcus Freeman is the one who handles, injury questions and stuff like that. No one of the questions that were asked in Marcus Freeman's press conference, it didn't come around to a Jordan Botelho question. And since we have seen him out there and we got to talk to the defensive coordinator, that's why I asked the question again. Wasn't expecting him to expound, on, details on where he is. I'm playing some video right now for those watching on the YouTube channel, and you can see it. And there's a staff member who was talking with Jordan Botelho as they were going through, working kind of on some rips, coming around a couple of the dummies, and you can see where Botelho kind of ripped with one arm, and there was, they came over and gave him some instruction in terms of exactly, maybe you do it this way a little bit. I think with some of the precautions, it appears in mind as you watch, and you can see again, I'm replaying it there, and you can see him talking with Jordan Botelho about that. Did anything stand out watching any of this defensive line drill, Jesse, as you were watching this?
I thought number 5 is Boubacar, right?
Yes.
I thought he got around the edge very quickly.
Yep. Don says, hold on just a second. Don in the YouTube chat says it's a Lando question. Coach Ash has been told where Botelho is to an extent, but Ash will not tell. I mean, like, it's an athletic training staff question, and that is like Lando handles the strength and conditioning, but the athletic trainers are the ones who handle the medical side. They're like the strength and performance people, and then they're the athletic trainers who are sort of the like the go-between between the strength staff, the coaching staff, and the doctors and things like that. So that's more, because like a lot of those things will come up when there's like with Notre Dame women's basketball when I'm talking to Neil Ivey, for example, and I'll get the same kind of answers for her. Like the coaches do typically, kind of stay away from that, and then the information they're given by the athletic training staff is okay. When they're ready to go, they go. But we know he's out there, so I guess we'll see. Maybe he could be ahead of schedule, but at the very least, he's out there practicing right now, and I think that is really good news for Notre Dame and really good news for Jordan Botelho as well, don't you think?
Oh, for sure. I think him being out there is a sign that he is ahead of schedule.
That's, again, that's kind of how we take it. You heard the response that we got, so it's just kind of up in the air right now. Maybe we'll get to ask Marcus Freeman that in a couple of weeks when we get another opportunity to talk to him. There's going to be plenty of things to talk about at that point, because that'll kind of be the point when we get to talk to him again, when training camp is winding down, and then they are at that point ramping into Miami prep for the last couple of weeks of the month of August. So one of the obvious strengths of the defense is the secondary, and Adon Shuler is a lock for one of those safety spots as well.
I would consider him one of the leaders of the secondary and of the defense because he's been around here for a long time. He's played a lot of ball. He's embraced that role. I think just as much as he's been challenged about becoming a better player, we've challenged him to become a better leader, and he's trying to do that.
So how much do you think they need that leadership, especially considering they lose a guy like Xavier Watts, Jess?
Yeah, I think it's important that someone does step up in the secondary. You usually want a leader per position group. I think Drake Bowen is obviously going to be the linebacker kind of leader, maybe even Jalen Sneed. The defensive line will have, some leaders. Maybe that's Burnham or Rubio or Onyé or, there's a good amount of potential along there. But I think like we were talking about last week, what could Leonard Moore improve in his game? Embracing more of a leadership role, right? Finding new ways to challenge himself every day. I think that bodes well for Don Schuler as well. They need someone to step up in the secondary and kind of be the guy now that Xavier Watts is gone. And that doesn't mean that's limited to just a Don Schuler. That could be a Christian Gray. That could be Leonard Moore. That could be, maybe even Tae Johnson if he gets into the starting lineup somehow. So I think it's definitely an advantage to have someone like Schuler because of all the game experience that Ash talked about, but, also someone who can be dependable and be a leader at the same time.
Yeah, and I mean, Schuler kind of had an understudy year. It might be easy to forget this is a guy going into his junior season now. He's going into his third year, and he got to play next to Xavier Watts all of last season, and he got to be around Watts that freshman season as well. And I remember it would have been the spring following his freshman year. I remember I got to talk to Schuler one-on-one about, and he just talked about how much being around Xavier Watts helped him in so many ways, not just the on the field stuff, but with that leadership stuff and, kind of seeing how he goes about his business, his preparation, his on-field work, all those different things. And that's literally what you want as you continue to build an elite program, is having guys not just hand off the baton from an on-the-field playing standpoint, but from a leadership standpoint as well, because there is a leadership void that has to be filled because of the fact that you lose guys like Jack Kaiser and Xavier Watts from a year ago. And some of the guys that you mentioned are perfect examples of guys who should be able to help fill that void, both from, obviously from the playing standpoint, but when you look at guys like Schuler and Drake Bowen, those are the guys who I think a lot of eyes are going to be looking to for leadership this season. And because they're those are two really important communication positions as well, right? Like you can spit like the middle linebacker and the safety in terms of communication with the entire defense. Very important.
Yeah, I mean, the linebacker is going to be calling defensive line and coverage call outs, and the secondary led by a safety is usually going to get the secondary and the type of coverage that they need to be in. So very important roles in terms of communication and getting the defense ready pre-snap.
Don't forget, you can watch us on the YouTube channels, whether it's the Irish Breakdown YouTube channel or the Sports Radio WSBT YouTube channel. You can watch us on either one during the show. Of course, you can listen on Sports Radio 960 AM in South Bend or on 106.1 FM in southwestern Michigan. You can download the podcasts after the fact, just all multiple different ways that you can watch and listen to this show on demand, whatever your option happens to be. We will take a timeout. When we come back, we'll continue with more from Notre Dame defensive coordinator Chris Ash, some of his thoughts on the potential of rotating four safeties. And I think that maybe this will perk your ears up a little bit, Jess. I guess we'll find out when we do that. Also, do want to say M. Moore in the YouTube chat coming in hot about the coaches poll coming out today. And apparently a lot of people are mad that Notre Dame is not higher in the rankings with the coaches poll coming out today, and that Notre Dame gets docked for losing a starting quarterback and all that kind of stuff. So we'll address that in rapid fire as well. That is all on the way in this show. We're a full 2 hours today because there's no South Bend Cubs baseball tonight. So we go till 7 o'clock tonight. We'll take a timeout. When we come back, more with Notre Dame defensive coordinator Chris Ash. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com.
Radio, WSBT.
We are back, and we are talking Notre Dame football, specifically the Notre Dame defense. We've got comments from Chris Ash, Fighting Irish defensive coordinator, who, of course, took over for Al Golden after Al left after 3 years and producing an elite defense that helped Notre Dame advance all the way to the national championship game last season. And now they go into a new season with a few question marks, but a ton of talent, man. Like that is something that stands out about watching this team at training camp so far, Jess. I tell you what, it is just bursting at the seams with talent and depth in a way that I haven't seen at, some of those key positions, especially defensively, maybe forever. I've been here for 25 years, and I don't know if I've seen this level of what we've seen so far. Does that get you a little excited? You seem like you're a little down today.
No, I think it's pretty evident that Notre Dame is the deepest that they've been talent-wise. You start looking at some of the rosters from even, pre-Marcus Freeman, and yeah, they had a couple guys here and there, but they just didn't have the depth, and they didn't have kind of the show-stopping talent that you have to get on the field now. And I think that's the biggest thing is they have so much young talent that is ready to be on the field now. And I think that's the reason why, I've said this before, but last year should be a gift or a little present to the fans because that national championship appearance was premature. In my opinion, I think you're really going to start seeing the full talent of this roster in the upcoming seasons. I think that this team is going to be the teams this season and upcoming are going to be better than the team that just made the national championship this past season. Ahead of schedule
Is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Championship appearance last year. I agree with that. I agree with that for sure. All right. So we heard Chris Ash talk a little bit about Adon Schuler. We're going to get to Tae Johnson specifically here in a minute, but there, speaking of depth, there is a lot of that at the safety position. And he was asked about the possibility of rotating 4 safeties this year.
I'm not going to put a number on anything from a rotation for any position. The players are going to earn the right to play. If they've earned the right to play, then we'll do what we need to do to get guys out on the field. Thankfully here we have a lot of depth. I think we have a lot of depth. We have a lot of guys that could become starters. But in terms of, how many guys are rotating here or there, those things will be determined near the end of camp. Right now we're giving everybody an opportunity to go out and compete, show us what they can do, and that's really what it is.
I mean, Adon Schuler is obviously a lock, and then you got Jalen Stroman, the Virginia Tech transfer. You got Tae Johnson. You got Luke Talich, the next 3 in line. What do you think about this talk about rotating 4?
I think rotating 4 safeties is too much, to be honest with you. I like keeping it small and simple, maybe 1 or 2 guys. I like guys who get comfortable throughout the season, and I never want people to feel like their job is on the line if they make a bad play, because I think that leads to hesitancy, and I think that leads to not playing to your full potential and capability. And so when you start rotating a lot of guys, I just think, again, it leads to more second thoughts. Am I doing enough? If I mess up here, is the next guy going to rotate in? So especially as you get down, later on into the season, you want experienced guys out there who know how to handle the situation, not guys who have been out there and partially handled some situations here and there.
Yeah, I mean, we saw a rotation of 5 linebackers last year. I think maybe that is a little different because you do have the different linebacker positions and you have specific situations. You can put them on the field and all that kind of stuff. Maybe it's the same with say, and we'll get more specific on the challenges of rotating 4 different guys. I tend to agree. Like, are you the best guy or not? You don't need like a 1 and a 1A or a 1 and then, 2A, 2B, 2C. If that's the case, it's just like you put your best guy out there, I think, and you kind of your best guys out there and you ride with that. I don't think you need to be throwing bodies out there just to be throwing bodies out there. Xavier Watts did play more snaps than anybody on the defense last year. And he did just fine because he was an elite defensive player after winning the Degurski Award a couple of years ago. So here's Ash specifically about the challenge of rotating 4 guys in a game?
Well, I think it's just that, who do you really trust, who can communicate, who can perform under pressure. That's really what it is. And who's instinctive and can make decisions really quick. Those things usually separate people. And again, time will tell where we're at with that with all of our guys. But they're all getting better in those areas. But it is a little bit different. That position's different than, the D-line or even at linebacker. You got to trust guys back there. They're safeties for a reason. They're the last line of defense. And they got to be great fundamentally, be able to make plays in space, plays on the ball, but it's more about getting guys lined up and making adjustments as much as anything.
You agree with that?
Oh, 100%. I agree with that. And I think the main thing he said was it's all about the adjustments. It's one thing to know, and I think this is probably where I struggled a lot, to be honest with you, is you study and you look at tendencies and film all week and you think you're good, but then you get into a game and sometimes they just do stuff that you're not ready for, and you have to be able to think on the fly or kind of think outside the box and be instinctive, like he was talking about. And I think that goes back to a lot of what that's the main thing when Marcus Freeman says football versus football, is he doesn't want his players just to be stuck in a mold where, oh, well, this is what I'm supposed to do, but they did this. No, like, you just be a football player, read the play, naturally react and make a play. And I think that's what Chris Ash is ultimately talking about. What's going to differentiate these guys is the guys who are just, yes, they're really good on paper and really good on film, but when they get in the game, they're just ball players. Like they just know how to adapt and make plays on the fly, and they're really not even thinking about it most of the time. Their body is just responding to what their eyes are seeing at the end of the day. So I think that's what's going to differentiate a lot of these guys, because they're all talented, but how are you responding on the fly, or how are you adapting when things don't go your way after you've studied all week? You know, different tendencies and formations. Yeah,
and I think that's what stood out about a guy like Schuler, for example, last year. Like very first game of the season, Johnny on the spot. He's around the ball. Like he got that interception against Texas A&M, much like Xavier Watts. Again, like going back to some of the things that he learned from him. But a lot of that just comes to the natural instincts and the reps that you've got. Just your feel for the game. And, we all know if the safety is out of position or he's thinking too much about where he's supposed to be, the next thing you know, you've got a guy going the other way, or, they're throwing the ball over the top of you or whatever it happens to be. So I think that the ability to put these guys in as many of those situations as they know they've got some guys who can play like that. Like you talk about instinct. That's why, especially the second interception that Tae Johnson got last week, like you could see his instinct and his athletic ability and all those things come into play. And I think that's why he's going to continue to be a riser. And I agree. Like, I just feel like 4 is probably too much. The biggest benefit of having all this talent in the room is, okay, you don't have to play all of these guys you don't have to do that. And then if for, some unforeseen reason you need, like an injury down the road, you've got guys who can step in and play when their number is called. But I don't think that, this isn't Little League. I don't think that you have to be rotating 4 guys back there just to say you're rotating 4 guys. Now, again, because this has become a position of strength, very similar to a few years back when you had Kyle Hamilton as a freshman and you had Jalen Elliott and you had Alohi Gilman, you would see the 3 of those guys. And Gilman and Elliott, because of their experience, they had more of the assignments, whereas Kyle Hamilton got to sit back there and play center field. So, like, I could easily see Tae Johnson in that kind of situation because, again, you're limiting the things that he has to actually think about by letting him kind of roam a little bit, play center field, and then Stroman and Adon Schuler are more assignment driven. So I could see a situation where they could play 3 of these guys at the same time. And that I kind of get excited about because we saw, what that was when those guys I just mentioned were doing that a few years back.
Yeah, I think 3 is maybe the perfect number. And with 3, you can also rotate them into kind of nickel and dime packages as well.
Yeah. And I mean, these guys are also going to get opportunities when, blowout situations come, they'll get reps, when you're up by a few touchdowns, those kind of things. And there are plenty of games that are going to give that opportunity this year. So they're all going to get a lot of chances. They're all going to be out there on special teams, but I don't think you necessarily need to rotate 4 guys over the course of the game. Now, speaking of Tae Johnson, we keep teasing him. Since the first day of camp, Johnson has become Notre Dame's breakout guy.
That's just what it is. It's probably his competitive spirit. He's competing to try to get better. He's becoming more consistent. He's becoming more vocal. He's talking a lot more. But I just like the whole group overall. They're all competing to get better. They're competing with each other. They're trying to raise and elevate the play of each other, and it's fun to watch.
Again, he didn't get too deep there, did he?
Not deep at all. But, he's not the only person that has talked so highly. You've had the head coach, you've had the defensive coordinator, you've had position coach. So, to me, the way this is setting up is there's no way that they can keep this kid off the field. They have to find a role for him.
Yeah. And he's very versatile. He can do a lot of different things. And like I said, again, not that you're going to roll 3 guys out there all the time, but with the proliferation of passing offenses and everything, I think that there is a place where 3 safeties make sense, and it's a different look. You can confuse, especially some younger quarterbacks, I think, and even some veteran quarterbacks by playing 3 guys back there. I think you can disguise a lot of stuff that way. You're more the defensive guy. Do you think that's a possibility?
Yeah, and I think also, what will have to be kind of looked into is what kind of player can Tae Johnson be as a downhill player? Can he bring pressure off the edge on some disguised blitzes? Can he tackle an open space that would allow him to stay in man-to-man coverage in a certain scheme? So, yeah, there's definitely a lot that you can do. But I guess I'm curious to see, what the kid's overall strength and weaknesses are. Is he just really good in coverage? Is he a really good tackler? Can he bring pressure off the edge and in blitz schemes? I think there's obviously more to it than playing really good coverage, but that's the stuff that we're going to find out over camp. And I just think the way that he's talked about and regarded, he's just kind of become already this special player that if he's not on the field, a lot of fans are going to be like, why? All we've heard about is this guy during camp so far.
No, that's exactly right. And I think he's going to see the field sooner than later. I don't think there's going to be any way around that. Now, Chris Ash also talked about upholding the standards of what became an elite defense for Notre Dame last season under Al Golden.
We're just trying to compete to get better every day. There's been a really solid foundation. There's been high standards set here. These guys have been coached well. There's a lot of belief in themselves and what we're doing and how we do business here, and that's a great place to start. And every day we just got to raise the bar, raise the standards, and keep getting better. And that's what we're trying to do.
I just feel like he went to the Crash Davis, Nuke LaLoosh school of talking to the media, giving quotes. I'm just trying to get better. Just want to help the team, help the ball club any way I can. That's all I am. I'm the defensive coordinator. I'm just another. I'm just 1 out of 11.
Yeah, a lot of compete to get better, solid foundation, belief in themselves, raise the bar, all of that sort of stuff. And I get it. That's the stuff that you want to say. But again, what maybe a better way to answer that is, give more specific standards that you really like, and maybe some of the stuff that you've challenged a little bit or stuff, you know what I mean? We know that the standards are there, and we know that, if you're an assistant under Marcus Freeman, you're competing to get better every day and you're raising the bar and, all of those things. But I really just would have liked to know, again, what are some of the standards he really enjoyed as he came into the role as a defensive coordinator? And maybe what were some of the standards where he was like, you know what, we need to get better at this, or maybe this is something we're hyper focusing on too much. So, obviously Al Golden did a tremendous job. This was a top defense in a lot of categories last year. And so Chris Ash, I think, is very fortunate to kind of be handed the keys in this sort of situation, right? Because it's not like he's going to a defense and completely has to rebuild it and set a new culture and bring a new scheme and players and all that stuff. Like, a lot of that was already set in stone for him. So again, I more so want to know about what is some of the stuff that he's doing to elevate some of those standards.
Yeah, and I mean, getting pushback in the live YouTube chat, because we're, kind of making comments about the comments. And, look, I asked, you heard the question that I asked about Jordan Botelho, and you heard the response. I asked about the defensive ends as well, and the fact that in the spring, there was the emphasis on getting more pressure specifically from the defensive ends as opposed to as much blitzing, as Al Golden did last year. And, so I asked about how the defensive end, and I'm not even going to play you the comment because it's literally 2.5 sentences of just a huge nothing burger. Yeah, the defensive ends are playing great. They're getting, they're getting after it. Something along those lines. No detail on what they're doing, how they're going about it, any of that kind of stuff. Like he's the one who told us, that they were widening them and playing them in 7 technique and all that different kind of stuff in the spring. So it is what it is, I guess, at this point.
I mean, do you think that's tactic though? Knowing, maybe Miami is listening. They got people who are scouting and looking for every sort of detail possible.
Yeah, I mean, it will be a little bit of an unknown, because you are coming off an Al Golden scheme. And, again, it's not like we're asking him to divulge secrets, like what downs he likes, what down and distance he likes to blitz on and when he, just likes to get pressure from 4. I'm just literally asking about how the defensive ends are doing and their focus on getting more pressure from those positions. So yeah, I mean, you can say that he's saying as little as possible, but at the same time, we talked to Mike Denbrock the day before, and we'll hear some of his comments tomorrow. He talked about a lot of specific guys, so I don't know. Maybe it's the new guy syndrome.
He's got a lot going on,
Yeah. One more timeout. We'll come back with a couple more comments. We've got rapid fire coming up in the 6 o'clock hour. We got a ton in rapid fire. Coaches poll came out today. We got comments from Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Smith, and J1 Sider. They all said some things about 2-back personnel. We've got comments from CJ Carr about his throwing instead of doing stretching before practice. All that's coming up in rapid fire in the second hour of the show. So we will do that when we we won't do that, but we'll have a little bit more from Chris Ash when we return. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Winding down hour one of Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. So glad to have you with us here today on a beautiful Monday, along with Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. We've been talking Notre Dame football. Is it us, Jesse? Do we just need to screw our heads on differently? Do we need to take some happy pills and just say, look, football is 27 days away. Like the season starts in 27 days. So we're being too gruff about this whole thing today?
I mean, I don't think we're being gruff. I mean, fact of the matter is there's a new defensive coordinator. And I feel like people, we're saying we want more answers or at least more elaboration on the questions being asked. And that's not because there's a distrust in Ash or, anything like that. It's just he's a new defensive coordinator. And the way that he's going to go about calling games, making adjustments, it's just simply not going to be the same. And so the more we can get insight to how he thinks, how the gears are turning, it can lead to, maybe more answers, maybe more understanding of why things are being done a certain way as the season goes on. So again, I don't want him to tell me all the trade secrets, and I don't distrust him. I just want a little bit of something to chew on.
Right. No, and that's exactly it. Like Scott in the YouTube chat says, I'm cool with our coaches beguiling and befuddling the media so long as they do the same to our opponents. I mean, you can still offer a level of insight about the players on the field, especially when he is experiencing them really still, some of them, like the freshmen especially, for the first time and now gearing up for a season for the first time. You don't have to, reveal trade secrets to do it, to give some insight into the play. That's why we're there. Like Scott, again, Scott is joking to an extent, but he's serious to an extent. There's at least a little, truth in every joke when he says he's cool with coaches beguiling and befuddling the media. I mean, we're there as the media to ask questions that most fans, I think, want answers, and also that we can understand the team the better and understand what the coaches are thinking as they prepare for this season, and a guy like him who is new to this situation to try to get a level of insight into how he thinks as he goes about preparing for this season, how he thinks when he goes about things like rotating for safeties, and he answered some stuff with that. But, look, somebody kind of brought up the point. It's not like Al Golden was rays of sunshine either, but Al Golden did give us a pretty good level of, again, some of those insights like I was talking about. And that's all we're asking from Chris Ash at this point. I take it you're in on that.
I had nothing more.
All right.
Nothing more to add.
I'm going to play one more comment. We heard Ash say multiple times after he was hired in the spring, this is Notre Dame's defense, not his defense. Marcus Freeman, though, says the Ash defense, he's the defensive coordinator, and it's his defense.
Well, yeah, he's going to tell you if it doesn't go well, it's on me. That's just like, again, I said this when I first got here. If it's not broken, don't try to fix it. We're going to try to make it better, and we're going to try to elevate it, and that's really that's a challenge because it's already performed at a really high level. But if you're afraid of the challenge, don't come here. And there's standards, there's expectations, there's great coaches, there's great players, and we embrace that, and that's what we want. And this is a group effort. This isn't me. It's the coaching staff, the players. We're working this thing together. And we're going to throw some things out. We're going to try it, see what it looks like, see if it fits. If it doesn't, we're going to move on to something else. We're going to do what we need to do to win games. We're going to do what our players here can do. What does that mean? I don't know. We'll see. But every week could be something different too, depending on who we play and what we got to do.
I mean, I felt like he was a little bit more open with that. Like at the very beginning, he that was like the closest thing to a joke. Well, of course, Marcus Freeman's going to say it's my defense because if things go wrong, then it's on me. But look. These guys, from what we've been able to see, they've excelled. It looks really good, especially the secondary. Like those kind of things. We're not going to get to see any real contact the rest of camp. We're going to get to see some of those 4-period practices and stuff like that. So how much we're going to be able to take out of that, I don't know. The real test of Chris Ash is not going to obviously be press conferences and media opportunities. It's going to be how he calls the defense on Saturdays. And, in the case of the season opener on Sunday, Jess.
Yeah, for sure. I think the number one thing that I enjoyed from that last snip was just him talking about, like, you can't come to Notre Dame and not embrace the challenge, So like that to me at least shows that he's passionate and fired up about the opportunity, but also wants to be great at the same time. So again, this kind of goes back to Marcus Freeman. I think he's done a great job of evaluating talent between recruits, coaching staff, etc. And so if Marcus Freeman trusts this guy, I have no other option but to trust him. And hearing him kind of talk like that and how he's going to embrace the situation and how he's going to lead this defense, there's a lot of similar characteristics and traits that Al Golden had. And so I think that the defense is in good hands, and that's going to be my stance until proven otherwise.
All right.
When it comes to Chris Ash.
Fully on board. Jesse's on board. We'll get on board together. Hour 2 of Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat is rapid fire. We've got a lot that we're going to not really rapidly. You know how it goes. We got a lot of topics, and rapid fire doesn't mean we're spitting through them like chiclets quickly, but we're gonna talk some two-bag set. We're gonna talk CJ Carr and his practice routine. We're gonna talk Freaks List. That came out today. Bruce Feldman's Freaks List came out today. We're going to talk Coaches Poll. That came out today. Preseason Coaches Poll and preseason polls. All that's coming up in rapid fire and more in the second hour of Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. It's hour 2 of Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat, and that can mean only one thing. Are you ready for rapid fire, Jesse?
Let's fire away.
All right, here we go. Jesse's coming out of his coma over there as he gets into things. We got a lot of stuff that we're going to get to. Do you want to start with the two-back stuff?
I think that's a good place to start.
All right, let's do it then. So we saw both 20 and 21 personnel packages when we were at Notre Dame practices last week. Irish backs Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price and their position coach, J1 Sider, fielded questions about that when they had their chance to speak to the media.
I get real excited because, hey, when I'm in an open space, I feel like I can do a lot of good for the team. I could be in the backfield too, but whenever I get outside and get to line up at receiver, it's just like a different type of feeling. I just feel more free, and feel like I am able to do more. Like it's one-on-one. It's me against you, and for the most part, I believe I'm gonna win those every single time.
I mean, Coach Denbrock's given us a lot of plays every day. It's been challenging but pretty fun. We've been asking for this back when Coach McCullough was here, and Coach Denbrock finally has listened to us. So we'll have a lot in store this upcoming fall.
Well, we're trying to figure out what Notre Dame going to look like this year on offense. If that's one of our best group, then how can we get some of the better players on the field that's in that room? But also, it's a great matchup. Like, my experience in that set, even my days back at West Virginia, it's a problem for defense. How did you fend it? Do you play a nickel defense? You play a base defense, and you keep 3 linebackers on? If you do, now we motion and get out, we got advantage. So it's all about what's going to give us an advantage to win.
All right, so that was J1 Sider, the new running backs coach, who, of course, came over from Penn State at the end. Jeremiah Love was the first to speak. Jadarian Price was the second to speak. Jesse, do you think there's a greater chance that we actually see more two-back personnel this year, or is it all just an early smokescreen to get us talking about it?
No, this is you should feel excited about this. I think that this is going to lead to more chances of two-back sets. The fact that they're already doing install the first week of camp shows me that it's something that is on the priority list. And the thing is even if you're not going to use it, you still have to install it, right? Because it might be situationally where you think, okay, per this matchup, we like maybe two-backs here, but you're not installing two-backs in the middle of the season, right? So yes, there are every kind of package or base package is going to get, installed during camp. How much they use it is going to be a different story.
Uh-huh.
But I think the part that really stuck out to me is when Jadarian Price said, hey, we approached Denbrock and said, we want to run more of this and got good feedback from it. So to me, that should be a positive sign. And then like what Sider was saying at the end, like that is such an advantage when you have two backs who could legitimately be a home run threat at the same time on the field at the same given play. And so it really puts a lot of strain on the defense because of, like you said, what kind of defense are they going to come out? Are they going to come out in a nickel and take a linebacker off? Are they going to, provide an extra linebacker? So now we're going to motion out probably Jeremiah Love, keep Price in the backfield and get a one-on-one matchup because they're staying with 4 linebackers in the box. Or does that mean Jeremiah Love now gets matched up with one of those linebackers and probably would win that battle, every day of the week? So there's just
probablys, I don't think, to that.
Right. And so there's just a lot of stress that you can put on a defense with two backs. And so the fact that they're exploring this early, that Denbrock took the feedback, and of course, Riley Leonard isn't there anymore. He was basically a two-back at any given play last season with his ability to run the ball, but that's no longer the case with CJ Carr. So how do you get to more, what I would say, traditional two-backs? You put Love and Price on the field at the same time.
That is absolutely right. And because of like all the things that everything that you said, just inject it. A lot of people have been wanting more of this. We saw a couple of years ago, not last year, but the year before when Sam Hartman was here, they were doing some more 21 type stuff, two backs and one tight end and a couple receivers. And, again, we're seeing not just 21, but 20 as well, which means two backs and no tight end and multiple receivers out there on the field because of the fact that really, to me, it's mostly about the mismatch that Jeremiah Love causes. And you heard him talking in that clip about getting out in space. And when you've got Jeremiah Love, as you said, matched up with an inside linebacker, that is bad news for the defense, and that is very good news for Notre Dame. And that's why I think, like, it's got everyone licking their chops. And it's not just, okay, let's get the two backs. This is, as we've all been talking about, we ranked the position groups going into camp last week. Running back, the number one ranked position group. I think most everyone considers running back the most well-stocked, deepest position group that Notre Dame has. And they've got a lot of their position groups are getting a lot deeper as we speak. But if that's the case, and you still have at least some questions with both the tight ends and the wide receivers, and the questions are different for each of those two groups, why wouldn't you want to capitalize more when you've got multiple home run threats in that running backfield, and the stress that you can put on a defense by having them on the field at the same time and then motioning them? It's like this is not most likely going to be their base package, but the fact that this is something that they can go to and use consistently and put defenses in serious jeopardy, it just makes sense, especially when you've got a weapon like Jeremiah Love that you can do so many different things with. So longtime college football writer Bruce Feldman has released this year's Freaks List. It's the top 100 athletic freaks in college football. He actually went to 101 on this year's list. But it's blank that he has Irish defensive end Bryce Young at number 44 and tight end Eli Raridan at number 85 on this year's list.
It's a bit surprising. If you told me that these two guys would be on the list a week ago, I would have been a little bit surprised, right? I think that there's maybe some other names that deserve to be, on this list. But I think the important thing is you have to know how he's defining freak, right? Because freak list has to do with speed, athleticism, burst, strength, all of that stuff. So if a guy can squat 550 pounds, that makes him a freak. If he's got a crazy vertical, that makes him a freak. If he's got a crazy broad jump, that makes him a freak. I'm just going to get cut straight to it. I'm a little bit disappointed and surprised that Jeremiah Love isn't on this list.
Little surprised at that as well. Widely regarded as the best running back in college football coming into this season, and everything that we saw from him. Now, no idea what the testing numbers were, but it feels like he needs to be this feels like a list that is made for Jeremiah Love, doesn't it?
Well, Singleton is on the list from Penn State just because, again, he can squat like 550 pounds. Like,
right.
There's still freakish things that Love can do, like his hurdling, his, that play against Penn State where he carried two defenders on one knee. Like, that's freakish if you ask me. So, again, I don't know if it's just the numbers don't, line up 100%, but Jeremiah Love deserved to be on that list. But let's not spend too much time on that. I think that Bryce Young and Eli Raridan, hearing their name on the list, should get you that much more excited. I mean, Notre Dame has been lacking at the tight end position ever since Michael Mayer left. We've heard Eli Raridan has had a really good spring and good start to the fall. So is he the next guy in line to be the next great tight end to come out of Notre Dame? All the signs right now are pointing to yes. And then when you start talking about Bryce Young, obviously his dad was an NFLer. His mom ran track at Notre Dame, I believe. All of the athleticism runs in the genes. We just haven't seen a whole lot of him yet, right? And so that should get you excited about a younger guy who's about ready to explode, right? Because we saw it early last season, but he got injured. I mean, the guy blocked, 3 punts or field goals as a freshman? Like, no one has ever done that before, right? So he's got a lot of freakish in him, but can he do it throughout the entirety of his season?
A lot of tools, a lot of freakish tools. The number 44 ranking that Young has, interestingly, is the lowest that Notre Dame has been ranked in the freak, for the top player on the freaks list. And when you think about, and I know Brian Driscoll made this point, but when you think about the way Notre Dame is recruiting, and we keep talking about the level of athleticism across the roster, you would have thought that maybe some of these guys would be a little higher, and that a guy like Jeremiah Love would be on there. But again, don't know what his testing numbers were, but Bryce Young has a vertical of 34.5 inches and a broad jump of 9.5 feet. Not bad, especially considering he's also put on 30 pounds. He arrived on campus. Feldman also mentioned Anthony. He didn't put him on the list, but he said he did make a compelling case for the Freaks list, which I thought was interesting. Knapp with a 30-inch vertical and a 425-pound bench press. I think that says something for a guy who, again, like one of the things that I was looking for from Knapp is more strength, and the fact that he's benching 425 pounds and like you can, like he doesn't just look like all of a sudden he's a, like he hasn't transformed himself like Eli Raridan, for example, since Raridan has been on campus. But Raridan's obviously been around a little bit longer. But over the course of one, like you can tell that Anthony Knapp is stronger. So like a guy, just outside the list didn't quite make it in Anthony Knapp. I think that that's a really good sign that Feldman mentioned him. And then he does mention Eli Raridan, a 350-pound bench press, a 335-pound power clean, and he squats 535 pounds. And that's pretty impressive considering the long frame that Eli Raridan has.
Yeah, those are some crazy testing numbers. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. Yeah. Also interesting, though, that Will Pauling and Malachi Fields, who, of course, played for Wisconsin and Virginia last year and who are now receivers for Notre Dame, they were both in the top 70 in Feldman's Freaks list last year, not on the list this year, which is kind of odd to just completely fall off the list.
Well, and Malachi Fields is on a lot of big boards for this upcoming draft. So it's like,
right.
What has really changed between now and then? So it's just, I don't know. So I guess let's spin this question a little bit. Who would be on your, let's take away the biasy and let's just not name names to name names here, but who would be on who would you add to this freak list, I guess?
I mean, Love is the most obvious one. I
think KVA belongs on that list too.
Yeah. Again, not knowing, it's not like Notre Dame, does a
combine,
a public combine every year and releases the numbers, so it's like, until they go to the NFL draft combine, we don't know what most of these guys are going to do in terms of their vertical and their broad and, how much they bench or any of that different kind of stuff. It would be fun, if we knew some of these numbers. Facilitate wants to know why you think KVA should be on it. Just because he's such an athletic guy?
I mean, he's a specimen. The guy is strong. He's fast. He's quick. He's agile. He can play the run. He can play the pass. He can come off the edge. He can stop the middle. He can play out in the flat with a running back. He could probably guard a running back one-on-one on a wheel route. Like, I think KVA and Jalen Sneed are both freaks, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think Jalen Sneed could be on that list if he just had probably a little bit more success coming into this season. So, KVA was, of the three, well, him and Sneed were pretty close, but Sneed and KVA were higher recruits than Bowen.
True. The freaks list is a fun list anyway. So, it's not like I'm
not upset about any of it,
by any means, but it's just, there's just some head scratching stuff. And again, I think some of the biggest head scratching stuff is the fact that guys like Pauling and Fields were on it last year in the top 70, and they're nowhere to be seen this year. Apparently they've been passed up by somebody. Like you would think at the very least that a guy like Fields would still be on there. Schuler potentially, like a year from now, maybe Tae Johnson is a guy who shows up there, like when we've seen some of the stuff that he can do athletically, the way he gets up and that kind of thing. So I don't know. Again, fun, somewhat head scratching, but at the end of the day, it's not like being on the freaks list, wins you anything. So,
yeah, that's the thing. Is like you could be the most freakish athlete, but still not end up being drafted.
Exactly. CJ Carr was seen throwing on his own while the rest of the team was stretching before practice last week, and he was asked about that after practice at the end of last week. Here's CJ Carr.
I don't love to sit there and stretch, and it's my mind is racing. So sitting there kind of just like I feel like I'm ticking, just like let's go. So I just like to go throw a little bit extra.
Do you have to get permission to do that to break ranks?
Kind of not. It's kind of like go do it and yeah.
So kind of not. He asked if he has to get permission to do that, to skip the stretching and go throw instead. And there was some video of him out there doing that. So, Jess, is Carr throwing while the rest of the team is stretching? Big deal, little deal, no deal?
It's really no deal in my opinion. I guess the only part that I'm a little bit surprised about is, and I'm not trying to make this into something that it's not, but everyone else is stretching, so why not just stretch with the rest of them?
That's the only thing that I don't like
he's not above the team is the only thing I could maybe play devil's advocate on.
Right. I generally don't think it's a big deal. But what you said, if the other 100 guys are out there in warm-up lines and doing all these stretches, the stretches are supposed to be for a reason, right?
Right.
So if the rest of the team is stretching, then I guess especially the quarterback, a guy in a visible leadership position on a team, that's the only thing that's like, well, why aren't you just go stretch with the team? Like there's a reason they do it. Otherwise they wouldn't be doing it. Right?
Right. It's like, if that's the case, everyone would just go straight to individual drills and we wouldn't worry about getting it loose at all. Right. And so I don't know. I'm just not necessarily buying the excuse of, well, I got a lot on my mind and my mind is racing. Like that's everyone before practice, like everyone's kind of geared up and to practice. And a lot of times too, you just sat through a lot of film and pre-practice prep. So like there's a lot of information going through your head and you're like, I just want to get going here. I just want to play football, get practice going, da-da-da-da-da. But again, everyone's going through that. So I don't have an issue with it again, but if I just think it's a little weird that CJ Carr doesn't think he needs to stretch / is above stretching with everyone else. That's where I'm at.
Same boat. So I'm little deal. The question was big deal, little deal, no deal. I'm little deal. In general, it's not a big issue. But again, if the rest of the team is out there stretching, there's a reason you're stretching. There's a reason that, the performance coach puts together all these different dynamic stretches and everything else and has them go out there and do that.
Agreed.
All right. We'll take a timeout. When we return, we've got more rapid fire. What are we going to get into? Oh, yes. The coaches' polls came out today. We'll talk about that when we return and more. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. We roll on. Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat, along with IrishBreakdown.com. Along with Jesse Stiers, I'm Sean Stiers. Hope you're having a great day. We've been talking plenty of Notre Dame football on today's show. We started off with some two-back stuff. We talked about the minor CJ Carr controversy. I don't know that it's as much of a controversy, but again,
Listen, all I got to say is you're 6-0. You've been balling out. I don't give a damn what you do pregame, pre-practice, pregame, but you haven't been named the starter yet. You haven't played a down yet. You haven't played a snap yet. It's easy for people to look over and say, man, what's CJ doing? Why isn't he stretching with the rest of us? It's easy for the media to look over and say, man, why isn't CJ stretching with the rest of the team? So like, I get it. Success in those sort of things shouldn't dictate what you can and can't do, but it's the simple reality of things, especially when you play quarterback. You win games and you play at a high level, you could start doing more of the stuff you want to do.
Fred in the YouTube chat, great point. George Costanza didn't stretch. He didn't need to stretch. I don't think – did Jerry stretch before that sprint? I think he did stretch a little bit, didn't he?
I think he did.
Jerry won that race. Maybe it was because of the stretching. I don't know. Stymie said, was it pre-practice stretching? Yes, we're talking about before every practice, the team lines up and they do their stretching, whatever stretching it happens to be, a lot of different stuff that they do. Stymie says, was he throwing before the stretching started and working on something? Was it the same day he threw the multiple interceptions? I didn't notice on day one whether or not he was doing this. I think the day in question was day 2 when we were out there. I think that would have been Friday. I'm not sure what his routine was on Thursday when we were out there and he threw interceptions.
Can I make a little joke here?
Sure.
Yeah, at least CJ Carr has given us something to talk about, unlike Chris Ash.
Give us a little material.
Yeah. Can I get a ding ding for that one?
There you go. I wish I was a domer, says in the YouTube chat. Did Carr do this last year? I doubt it. I would be certain you were right. I doubt as a freshman he was skipping pre-practice stretching, but now that he's competing for the quarterback job, it's like, I've got other things to do. I'll go out here and I'll get my blood flowing that way. Yeah, Fred says Chris Ash might have been stretching. I'll tell you something beyond whether or not CJ Carr is doing warm-ups or throwing before practice or whatever else. Something the collective Irish fans today, I won't say everyone, but some people went a little bit nuts when the preseason coaches poll came out. Have you seen the preseason coaches poll that came out today?
I think I glanced at it. Notre Dame was at 5, right?
Yeah. Texas is number 1. Defending national champion Ohio State is number 2. Penn State number 3. Georgia number 4. Notre Dame 5. Followed by Clemson, Oregon, Alabama, LSU, Miami at number 10. So you got a top 10 matchup in the coaches poll with Notre Dame and Miami. The season.
That's staged. Come on.
Arizona State.
You're telling me Miami's better than Arizona State? Get out of here.
So many are, I agree. Many are mad that some of these teams are ahead of Notre Dame. Like Ohio State's replacing a quarterback. They're number 2. People really burnt up about Penn State coming in at number 3. M. Moore in the YouTube chat says, why does the first-year starter only seem to impact Notre Dame in the rankings, per the experts, and not Texas, Ohio State, Alabama, Michigan, etc.? Don says, what is driving the fan base crazy is the ranking of Penn State and Texas. Look, I told you that the preseason polls were predominantly going to be driven by who's got the returning quarterbacks. And whether you love Drew Aller or not, I'm actually surprised that Penn State is number 3 and not number 1 because of,
I agree. They have the most returners and the most experienced returning quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. Texas obviously has a guy in Arch Manning who a lot of people love. And even though technically, this is going to, he won't be a first-time starter. He has played before. He has taken the field before. And Texas has a really talented roster of their own. So I don't know. What do you think? Is Notre Dame being disrespected in all of this?
No, and I don't think anyone should give a rat's about it, to be honest with you. I'm sorry if this is eating into the next question. I think you set this question here purposely because you know how I feel about it.
Let me ask it, since you're going to get into it, because Adam Rittenberg from ESPN did an informal poll of coaches like around media days, and the coaches say that they think that the preseason polls should be eliminated because they carry too much meaning, and teams are either undervalued or overvalued based on where they start off in the preseason polls. So are you in or out on that?
It's a shame you even had to ask me, am I in or out? You should know my answer. I'm 100% in on this. What these polls are used for is to create fake matchups early in the season, aka giving Miami a 10 ranking and saying it's a top 10 matchup to start the season. And honestly, it's not fair to a lot of teams because one, you get overhyped and then everyone crushes you when you don't live up to expectations, or two, you're undervalued and you continuously have to prove your point the entire season, all because you got ranked behind someone in a preseason poll. So my thought process is there should be no polls until the first month of football is over. The first poll of football should come out the first week of October when there's actual footage, data, hard concrete evidence of what these teams are and aren't, and then we should start formulating opinions. But, it's overblown. And to kind of get back to M. Moore's question, I kind of want to hit two birds with two stones here. Why does every first-year starter only seem to impact Notre Dame in the rankings? Well, you kind of have to look at this objectively. Texas's roster was loaded last year, and they have arguably the number one quarterback in the country.
Right.
Recruit that hasn't played yet.
Well, he's played. He just hasn't been the guy.
A full
yet.
Starter.
Yeah.
Ohio State coming off of a national championship. You know what they have that any quarterback can throw to? The number one wide receiver in the country. And they've recruited well forever. They've got a stacked roster of right.
They always reload.
Alabama, same situation. They're reloading. They're continuously one of the best rosters year in and year out. Michigan, I'll give you Michigan, but you know what they have? They have a national championship that they won within the last 2 years. So there's reasons for it, right? Notre Dame has finally kind of pushed down that door when they beat Penn State, when they beat IU, when they beat Georgia. But before that, what did Notre Dame have to stand on nationally? All these other programs, maybe except Texas, they have something to stand on. They have success that they can stand on. So I get it. It might hurt. And yeah, Notre Dame beat Georgia and they beat Penn State. Penn State's got like 5 or 6 guys on that freak list, a returning quarterback, an NFL defense, 2 NFL running backs.
Yep.
It's just a matter of and an easy schedule. Can their coach get them to where they need to be? So I understand it. It might not seem fair.
Well, and look, it's
why you let the season play out.
It's the coaches poll as well, So like how much actual weight do you want to place on the coaches poll? So like to your point about should the coaches poll preseason be eliminated? Absolutely, because the coaches put, many coaches don't even bother looking at what other teams are. Like they will rely on their sports information director to put a list together for them and then just sign off on it and turn it in. We shouldn't be placing any weight on the coaches poll. Now, in terms of Notre Dame being disrespected, they're number 5 in the preseason poll. How disrespected can they be? So we're gonna get mad and split hairs about a couple teams that maybe you think don't deserve to be. Is there a better case for Notre Dame to be ranked ahead of Georgia? Georgia's 1 spot ahead of Notre Dame. How thinly do we want to slice that hair? That's what it comes down to me. Who cares? It's the preseason poll. You do your job. Like you're going to be okay. Like Irish Gordy and not in the YouTube chat says hilarious because Brian Driscoll just spent a whole hour talking about how disrespected Notre Dame is. How disrespected can you be if you're number 5 when you've got a completely unproven quarterback, regardless of which guy is going to win the job? You've got a completely unproven quarterback you're going to be throwing out there.
A new offensive line.
So if that's disrespect, okay, sign me up for that. That's just that much more for Notre Dame to go out and play for, I guess, to prove that they should be one spot higher than Notre Dame or than Georgia, or a spot higher than Penn State. But again, like I thought that Clemson and Penn State would both, like I thought it would be some combination Penn State, Texas, Clemson as the top 3 teams. So I think that Clemson at number 6 maybe has as much right as anybody to be talking about disrespect to me. If you're Notre Dame and you're number 5 of the nation after you just finished 2nd in the nation last year and you're breaking in a completely unproven quarterback, I would be happy with the number 5 in the preseason polls. Like I would have no problem with that. I don't think they're being disrespected. I think that they are being adequately respected because, as I said a couple of months ago, I felt like coming into the season, so much of how these polls and rankings would look is, who have you got coming back at quarterback? Now, again, do some of these other programs have questions at quarterback? Yeah, but Notre Dame has a completely unproven guy that they're going to be started, but they're number 5 in the preseason poll. So I've got no problem with that. As to the question about should the preseason poll be eliminated because too much weight can be placed on that, absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. But at the same time, it gives us something to talk about as well. So how bad can it be? Right? Gets everybody fired up 3 weeks, 4 weeks before the season starts. How bad can that be? You stepped all over my question there, though, Jess. All right. One more question in this block before we take our last timeout and then come back to wrap up with some very important stuff. So one other thing that has picked up, like we were talking earlier about, questions from the media during press conferences and stuff at Notre Dame so far. Marcus Freeman asked at the start of training camp about preparing for the Heat in Miami for this month's season opener after preparing for the Heat in Texas for last year's season opener.
We can't control the weather, but we can control hydration. We can control supplements and all those things. So we have to continue to do that. There was a couple hot days, Monday and Tuesday, when our guys were out there running in the heat and working out. Today wasn't a crazy hot day.
I'm just going to stop this because Don is continuing with the ranking conversation. He says it has nothing to do with Notre Dame's ranking. It's who's ahead of them. So who are you kicking out? Who are you kicking out? You're going to should Notre Dame be ranked ahead of Texas? No. Should Notre Dame be ranked ahead of Ohio State?
No.
No. Should Notre Dame be ranked ahead of Penn State?
On paper, no.
Right. Should they be ranked ahead of Georgia?
Maybe. I give you Georgia.
Right. They won a close head-to-head.
Still had a backup quarterback.
Right. So we're going to go nuts over 1 or 2 spots and who's ranked ahead of them. How can you be mad that Penn State is ranked ahead of you when they have a quarterback who most people consider a first-round NFL draft pick? We can talk about whether or not we think Drew Aller actually deserves that, but Penn State has widely regarded one of the top returning rosters in all of college football. They went to the semifinals last year, and they've got a returning quarterback. So if you're gonna say Penn State or Notre Dame, your pollsters are gonna give it to Penn State because they've got the experience at quarterback plus a very good roster to go along with it. Notre Dame has a big question to answer at quarterback. Like, we all think that the quarterback is going to be just fine, but you can't expect coaches and everyone else nationally to think the same thing when he's unproven. That's why I think Notre Dame is just fine being where they are at number 5. And if Georgia and Penn State are ahead of them, who cares? Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I get why people are frustrated because Notre Dame just beat Penn State, but there was a lot of turnover. Penn State also has 2 NFL running backs. They have NFL players littered all over their defense. They have a quarterback who's played in a lot of games compared to CJ Carr, who has played 0 games. They play an easier schedule. Like it's I don't think you should get bent out of shape about a preseason ranking when you're in the top 5. It'll all work out.
Right. And that's what it comes down to. Where it is right now on August 4th is going to look a lot different by the time the end of November rolls around. Again, I think people are just mad because they want to be mad and they want to play the disrespect card when it comes to Notre Dame. We're talking about 1 or 2 ranking spots and a couple. You can make cases for any of these teams. You've got the defending national champion in front of them. And again, I'm surprised Penn State is not ranked number 1. They're ranked number 3. I've got no problem with Notre Dame being at number 5. Do some of these other, like do Georgia and Ohio State have questions like Notre Dame does? Yes. You can't tell me that going into the season that Notre Dame deserves to be ranked ahead of Penn State when they played a game that went right down to the wire last year. And the most important position on the field, that question has to be answered by Notre Dame. Whereas Penn State has a quarterback who some thought could have gone in the first round last year and who most think is going to go in the first round next year. That's going to weigh very importantly for most people who are casting these ballots. So, again, I want to talk about who's in front of who and disrespect and everything else. I just don't see it. I think that Notre Dame is in a good position being number 5, considering they do have such a big question to answer at quarterback because they've got a great roster, obviously, as well. Last time out, and we will wrap this up. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Back to wrap things up as we close things down here on the show. We've got just a little bit of time left. Jess, I'm just going to hit you. Do you want me to hit you with the easy one, or do you even want to talk about Micah Parsons?
Easy button.
Is Micah Parsons the easy button? Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't want to get into all that.
You want to go?
People are fired up. If we have time,
Okay.
we can get into that one.
All right. We stirred things up enough. Irish Gordian Knot says he wishes I was on the earlier show today when they were apparently were going disrespect. I mean, that's the great thing about having different shows that you can watch and listen to, right? Everyone's got
different opinions.
That's exactly right. Newly retired defensive lineman Ndamukong Suh says Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre are the two quarterbacks he took the most pleasure in sacking. If you had the chance to sack one quarterback, who would it be?
I don't think you're going to guess this. I'm going with a different mindset.
Okay.
I'm going Lamar Jackson.
Whoa. Just degree of difficulty?
If I can sack Lamar Jackson, I can sack anyone.
That's true. That is true.
I want to know I can get the best.
I honestly thought that you might go the Aaron Rodgers route with this.
Nope. There's no one I would take pleasure in just sacking,
Did Lamar Jackson disrespect you at some point?
No. I just want to know I'm a peak athlete and I can sack any quarterback. Again, if I can sack Lamar Jackson, I can sack anyone in the league.
Outbound says Tom Brady. Mine, like all time, it would have to be Terry Bradshaw or Jim Plunkett. Like they both just had those hateable, punchable faces, like Bradshaw, with both of his teeth out, and Jim Plunkett squeezed that big head and big face of his into that tiny Raiders helmet. It just like seemed like it was coming out. Like those would be the two all time. I like your thinking with the Lamar Jackson though. Challenge yourself. If you can get him, you can get anybody. I am Tenson says too bad the Cowboys can't sack Jalen Hurts. Well,
let's look at record.
Maybe last season. Let's look at head-to-head when Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott are both healthy. Dak has the winning record in that situation. A lot of people conveniently forget that.
I'm a big Cam Newton fan. I love what he's saying about Jalen Hurts.
What's he said about Hurts?
He's not a top 10 quarterback.
A lot of coaches and executives agree.
Ball
Unanimously. Well, that poll that ESPN did of the coaches and executives, everyone that voted in that, NFL coaches and executives, had Herbert ranked ahead of Jalen Hurts unanimously.
Oh, 100%. He's 1,000. Okay, not going to get exaggerated. He's much more talented than Jalen Hurts at the quarterback position.
Yeah.
Winning matters, but not all wins are because of your quarterback.
I am Tenson wants to know who won the most recent Super Bowl. Again, I go back. Brad Johnson won a Super Bowl. There have been plenty, Jeff Hostetler won a Super Bowl. Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl. We're going to have to wrap it up with that. Thanks for all the spirited interaction today. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat with IrishBreakdown.com.